Well, I've gone and done it now. I FOMO'd. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up an order I placed with Mile High Comics. And in this order, I have to admit it was a FOMO-induced sort of situation, and I can explain, but I don't know if it matters. I'm still going to open up a great box of comics, hope they're in high grade, share them with you, and show you what I paid for them to see if it made good financial sense. But I have been enjoying the Sandman show on Netflix. And I won't go into details about the show. This isn't a review of the show. You can check it out for yourself or not. It's really up to you. But I've really been enjoying it. And I'm still in the middle of the first season. And one of the things that they did was Netflix released all of the Sandman episodes at once. And I'm still treating it like a weekly release, so I watch about one episode per week just to kind of make sure that I've got enough content instead of just binging it and moving on to the next thing. I really like that delivery model. It kind of lends itself more to the sequential model that comics are, that sort of serialized format. So I like the weekly episode release on streaming. Some folks like to just binge watch, and that's all fine. They treat it more like a really, really long movie, and that's all good. But I really think the show's well done. I love the cast, just everything about it. Just it's just clicking for me. And what Netflix did is once they released the season, they ended up putting out one, I believe, and I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know exactly, but I believe it's one long bonus episode that's based off of two different stories from the Sandman comics. And what I ended up doing is when I heard about it, I had already started watching the show and I really liked it. And then they had the bonus, which was based off of a couple of comics that I didn't have. So aside from the two Sandman keys to have, which is issue 1 and then the first appearance of Death, I don't have those. I have all of the issues leading up to this book that I purchased where I had FOMO'd. And I'll talk about this book once I get to it in the unboxing. But as a fan of the hobby in general and of comic book collecting, one of the things that I love is that you can make it whatever you want. You can make it your own. And you can also evolve how you collect. When I first started back into the hobby in this turn, I don't know if it's my 8th, ninth, or 10th turn at comics, but when I got back into it around 2019, I really got interested in the grading aspect and was feverishly going through my entire collection and trying to figure out how to best organize it for the purpose of finding books to send off for professional grading and possibly even consolidating some of my collection. But it ended up actually taking a different turn where I expanded my collection, and I'm still very much interested in grading, but one of the things that I decided to do was I was going to subscribe once again to new books, and then I've taken a break from that, and now I'm considering starting up again. And it's a really, really fun way to kind of create your own time machine where you can just say, I'm going to focus on the Bronze Age, I'm going to focus on the Copper Age. It could be around a particular creator or artist. You can find all of these niche and fun ways to enhance the hobby for yourself and make it fun. And that's just part of collecting. It's why sometimes it's hard to explain why we collect and why we do certain things. And it's my way of trying to explain and justify why I think FOMOing is okay every once in a while. It's really kind of everybody's business. You can FOMO over a store exclusive, an auction, and overbidding at the last minute just because you really, really want a book, even though you know you're overpaying it and it might be available elsewhere for less, but in that moment, you got to have it. And that's kind of the way it works for me. Every once in a while, I allow myself to do this. And it's really, I learned about this when I was looking at nutrition. I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a specialist. I certainly have a long way to go in that journey of just being a healthy human. But what I learned a long time ago was you cannot sustain perfection. You can't approach something and be perfect all the time, you'll just end up letting yourself down. You have to forgive yourself. You have to allow yourself to do certain things so that what you're doing for the majority of amount of time makes sense. And this is kind of what I do with comic book collecting. I allow myself to FOMO. I will buy into something, I will overpay on something because for whatever reason it's speaking to me in that moment and I want to have the book and I'm going to invest in it and I'm going to take care of it and I'm going to add it to my collection. I'm going to love it and I'm going to read it, learn about it and all of those things, right? Because then everything else I'm doing with the hobby makes sense. All of this time that I'm putting into data entry and spreadsheets, analysis, formulas, coming up with wild theories, pricing algorithms, sharing things on social media regarding great value picks and buys and so forth. I spend a lot of time on it because I love the hobby so much. But I also do experience a little bit of burnout. And one of the ways to kind of combat the burnout syndrome is to allow yourself some forgiveness, to do something fun, do something different, do something that maybe you would consider to be a guilty pleasure. And that's what I really love about the hobby is comic book collecting lets me do that. So let me get to the unboxing of this order and you can see sort of which book I would consider to be maybe that bowl of ice cream where I let myself have that cheat meal or cheat night. And I can show you which book I picked up. And then with a lot of these orders that I've talked about, I end up finding that one book that I really want and I opt to sort of build an order around it. And so what I did with this is I found that one book, I wanted to buy it, I had to have it. I overpaid probably, we'll see when we look at the numbers. But then I used that analysis that I've worked so hard to put together and ultimately deliver where I can find some extra number of books that make sense from a value perspective to acquire. And then I take those books, mix it in with whatever FOMO-induced purchases I've made, and place the order, and here we are. Let's take a look. All right, here we go. This is that order that I placed with Mile High Comics. I chose FedEx, as you always have the option to choose. I always choose that over USPS. It's no extra charge, so for me, it's the only way to go. It's a very consistent way of getting your comics delivered from them, so let's get this opened up. Okay, nice and easy, no hassles, just one piece of tape holding this order together. How about that? So let's go through this and see what we got. All right, first book, Tomb of Dracula, number 46. I know I'm way late to the Marvel horror, Dracula, Blade sort of speculation and collecting here. This is my third copy of Tomb of Dracula, the original Bronze Age series. And these non-keys of Tomb of Dracula will just float into Mile High from time to time. This has pencils and cover art by Gene Colan, inks by the late, great Tom Palmer, and written by Marv Wolfman. Next one is Batman 362. No real significance here other than a really fun Batman and Riddler cover by Ed Hannigan. This is also written by Doug Mensch. But I was not collecting DC at all at this time, so I'm missing a lot of these old great Batman books. So I love adding these to my collection in high grade whenever they show up on Mile High. All of these books were purchased near mint. They may not grade out to near mint, but that's part of the fun, is to see which ones grade out as a 9.4, a little below, a little above. And the next book is X-Men 200. Now, you could argue that I also FOMO'd on this one. I don't believe in my heart that I did because I already had a couple of copies. But when I was looking at this, when the X-Men 97, it was either a trailer or a clip where it showed Magneto in this ridiculous outfit here with the giant M and the purple. He's kind of going sleeveless. He's got the armbands going there. So that's a whole look for him that he's going through in this. But in this issue, number 200, Magneto becomes the headmaster of Xavier's Academy. Really classic John Romita Jr. cover here. It's a double-sized issue, which I've talked about before. Once these issues kind of come out as double-sized, yeah, the cover price is different, $1.25 there. But in terms of collectability, desirability, graded value, the fact that a book is double-sized doesn't really matter. Now, if it's square bound and there's other properties of the physical book itself that could affect the grade and the value, sure. But the fact that this book is double-sized, it really is just about the story, the spec on Magneto wearing this costume, and it really is, it's a get-up, that's for sure. So that's really irrelevant now, the fact that it's a double-sized issue. But looks to be in pretty good shape from what I can tell here in the bag. The copies that I had from when I was collecting, I bought these from my LCS, probably as a back issue, but they were not near mint, so I wanted to secure a near mint copy, and this one looks really, really great. Another near mint book, Black Widow #3. This one really is not necessarily a key. I guess technically maybe Yelena Belova's third appearance, which is not really a key anyway, but I love this J.G. Jones cover with Yelena fighting Natasha here on the cover. Just really cool art of the two Black Widows. And I have found that this series from 1999, the Marvel Knights Black Widow, is really tough to get in a high grade. Lots of typical color breaks and things, probably just spending too much time in back issue bins and kind of folding over. But once Yelena was announced as a character that was joining the MCU, and now she's in the Thunderbolts, I'm kind of going back and trying to find her early issues. So this one also too looks great. You know, not necessarily guaranteed 9/8 candidate, but from the spine perspective, like I was saying, this one looks to be pretty intact. Definitely some issues there on the corner, a little bit of corner dotting or fraying, splitting, whatever you want to call it. But same thing on the top there, just slightly having an issue. So probably in the 9.6, 9.4 range, just looking at it here in the bag. All right, and then the book that I skipped here is the book that I FOMO'd on. Let me get this back out of the stack. And I sort of gave it away talking about Sandman earlier, but here it is. And it is Sandman 18, written by Neil Gaiman, art by Kelly Jones, and cover art by Dave McKeon. And this is the standalone story of A Dream of a Thousand Cats. So I can't wait to finish the proper Sandman series on Netflix and then take a look at that bonus episode. Now, one of the other draws to this book for me was, again, the collectability of it. I really love all the McKeon covers. It's just, they're so different and creative, and it just adds another layer to the Sandman comics. And certainly now there's this additional layer because there's a live action series pulling from the original comics. And when I heard about this adaptation around this story, I went quickly to my digital collection and scanned to see which Sandman issues I had to make sure I had Sandman 18, and I didn't. And then I went right to my go-to, which is Mile High Comics, and they had a copy. It was certainly more than I was expecting or wanted to pay, but I let FOMO set in, and I saw the cover with the cat there in the broken frame. It was just, a lot of it was speaking to me. Now, from the condition perspective, I do want to open this and take a look. I am seeing some possible spine splitting up and down, but I can't tell if that is actually the fraying of the paper or if it is wrapping. And I think it is on the paper itself. So that you can kind of see is already happening up and down the spine all over the place. I don't know exactly how CGC handles that. It is not a 9/8 candidate, unfortunately, and it's tough with this black cover. And there's a couple things going on with this one. Right there on the corner, you've got some softness, a little bit of splitting there, but then also slight color break right there. And then, hopefully you can see in the light, there's a little bit of a stacking crease right there. And then same thing with the corner on the back. It's just soft enough. So could this end up being a 9.6, possibly maybe a 9.4? It's just a matter of how much CGC would knock the book for having, it just looks like the paper like is sort of bleeding through the spine itself. I don't really know exactly how that's handled. I've seen cases kind of go back and forth where it's ignored, especially like on a cardstock book. This is not cardstock, but sometimes cardstock on the darker covers, they just have a lot of whiteness up and down the spine. So I'm sure Mile High saw this and just said, oh yeah, that's a near mint copy, because we don't really quite know what to do with that. But really, where this book is going to get hammered are the corners. They're just too soft. So if I'm grading this out, I'm probably thinking that it's a 9.2. Now, I will say the other interesting thing with this book is that there is an error edition, and I don't know if Mile High actually goes in and checks for errors in these books, but I'm going to check right now. And unfortunately, it is not. So the error version of this book, these 3 panels are printed with blue ink, and apparently it's a very scarce version of it. This book is the standard with the yellow. So I was kind of going for a couple of things there, obviously hoping to get it in high grade, getting it in a 9.8, and then maybe seeing if maybe they weren't paying attention to the error version and the error version kind of slipped into the order. But this isn't the case. Again, to me, if this is a solid 9.2. I think it's a very, very crisp. I mean, I don't even think it's worth pressing. I think it's just going to have the standard issues. I mean, maybe it would. I mean, does every book benefit from a press? You could argue yes, but is it going to take it from a 9.2 to a 9.4 or 9.6 because of a press? I don't think so. And if it came back at 9.4, that would be fine. But I'm probably going to grade it in my system as a 9.2. Just because of the softness of the corners. Spine looks really good. I could make a pretty strong case for it being a 9.4, but right along the edge, that the splitting that's going consistently up and down the book, I always err on the side of caution. I feel like if I'm ignorant to what the rule is, I always try and downgrade. Some people may say that spine looks so tough from the splitting perspective, maybe it's more like a 9. I don't think it's anything less than a 9, because I don't see any color breaking spine ticks on the front, and there was just one on the back. So that's where I'm settling in around a 9.2. So leave me a comment if you think it's anything different. I'd love to get your feedback on that. But like I said, I've seen a lot of the modern releases, the cardstocks, get graded as 9.8 with that sort of fraying or spine splitting up and down because of the thickness of the book and as those pages rest within the cardstock front and back cover. Let me show you what I paid for these books. I'll show you what I paid for this Sandman as I FOMO'd all over it, and then kind of compare it to the fair market value for the raw books, as well as the values if I were to get these books professionally graded. All right, here is that order that I placed with Mile High Comics back on August 19th, 2022. You can see I paid $127 for the 5 books. I only paid $5 in additional fees, and that just covers insurance. Once you order, I believe, over $75, you get that free shipping option, and then you can pick FedEx or USPS, whichever you prefer. Now, what I do is I take that $5 and I distribute it across the 5 books, and so I add that into my cost to acquire each book, and if my math is correct, then summing up the 5 books will equal $127, which matches what I paid. So let's examine the total cost of each book and compare it to the cover price fair market value. You can see from a raw value perspective, I lost $66 on this order. And my intent is not to buy comic books from Mile High and flip them raw. My intent is to appraise them, grade them, screen them, put them into my collection, wait on them, send them in for grading. It's really more of a long-term process for me. So I kind of disregard the fair market value when I'm doing this sort of retrospective on the order itself and looking back to see what I paid and did it make sense. So I'm not trying to necessarily justify it. I know what I did. I mean, you're staring at it right there. It was a $33.20 loss from a fair market value perspective to acquire that book, Sandman 18. You can see, let's just get right to it, $46.20, and it has a fair market value of $13. It was not the only loser, which is nice. It has some company. Tomb of Dracula, number 46, I paid $31 for that book. It is $8 raw, according to cover price. And X-Men 200, I paid $17.80, and that has a $6 fair market value. Now, I didn't lose on every book. Trying to justify my actions here. $13 for the Black Widow #3. Raw, it is $15, which is a nice modest $2 gain. And Batman 362, I paid fair market value for that book. Raw in near mint condition, $19, and that's what it's worth. Looks like I'm okay there as well. So, of course, I'm just kind of messing around here. I was going to buy the books anyway. A lot of my decision-making process into buying comic books, I do take into account fair market value. It does influence my formulas in order to prioritize better picks. So when I'm sharing out value picks on Instagram, I'm trying to look at books that are selling for under fair market value, or books that are selling for more but have some sort of other built-in value or potential if you were to get the book graded. But in this case with Sandman, I think I just flat out ignored fair market value, and that's just what I decided to do. Now, if I were to get these books professionally graded, or I was to grade them myself and send them in, and I wanted to kind of see what they were worth, I'm going to go ahead and punch in the old 9.4 to represent near mint and see if any of these books are valuable in a 9.4 just as they are. And all 5 of them do have values, with all of them being older books, even the Black Widow from 1999. They all have some graded value. So to me, this is sort of the built-in risk tolerance that I kind of apply to everything, meaning if I'm going to gamble on a particular book, I want to make sure that it at least has some value in a CGC 9.4, not just the raw book perspective, because if I were to move on from this book, could I still add some sort of value either to my collection, my slabbed book professionally graded collection, or maybe recoup some costs and apply that to a future purchase. So in this case, 9.4, Batman 362 is standing out right now at $90, Sandman 18, $86, so really good value there. That makes the sting of the purchase for the book a lot less intense. So let me slide over column AB here, CGC value. So a nice $7.12 gain if I were to send Sandman 18 in, which I talked about that I think that raw copy that I have is a 9.2. It's possible that it could be considered a 9.4 if a lot of the splitting along the spine is just allowed as sort of a manufacturing defect. I don't really know. I think it does depend on the book and the circumstances. But if CGC allowed for that to be acceptable, I think it would get dinged on the corners and it would be a 9.4. But what's nice is knowing that even if I spent $46.20, that after all of the grading fees, I would still have a little bit of value add into my collection at $7.12. The Batman 362 was the biggest winner here at $38.32 increase just in a 9.4. And even that X-Men 200, $75 in a 9.4 for that book. So that could be considered a possible value pick, right? If you're able to find it closer to the $6 fair market value than what I paid, $17.80. But even at $17.80, there was still some additional value to be had there. The loser from the CGC 9.4 perspective is now that Black Widow 3, where it cost me $13, but it has only a $40 value in a CGC 9.4. Therefore, I would have lost $5.69 had I sent that one into CGC straight away. So interesting there, where that was the only positive gain from the raw book perspective. And again, this is where it's like, would you grade the book? Well, if I screen it and it's a 9.4, it's not worth sending in, even though it's worth $40 because of the cost to acquire the book plus all of the additional fees. So that's kind of how I work out and justify which books I want to send in for grading. Now, part of the fun for me is not just the speculation around the books, but speculation on the possible condition. And so let's flip all of these to 9.8 just so you could see what the ceiling is for this order, the potential value to be gained here. And for these 5 books, we have a potential gain of $1,941.58, pretty much being carried by that Sandman 18, which I'm shocked to see that it is over $1,300 for that book in a 9.8. I can't quite believe that, but that is what is being reported by GPA. Now, it is unfortunate because I don't believe that I could get a 9.8 out of that book with those softer corners. But that was again where I was like, it's worth the gamble, it's worth the risk to try and get that book, even at $46, because of that huge, huge gap between the 9.8 and a 9.4. Lots of value in that Tomb of Dracula 46. Again, a non-key. It did cost me $31, but this is where I start to look at and trying to justify my actions here in a way, because I'm like, the potential, it's just too great. It's worth the gamble. It's worth trying to get even maybe a pressing candidate and see if I could squeeze out a 9.8 out of a book. So that's $380 for that Tomb of Dracula 46. 178 for the X-Men 200. Again, I think that that's a really, really nice, strong value pick. If you're considering getting that book, if it's like, hey, I can find that book in near mint all day long for $5 and maybe press it out into a 9.8, and then you've got a nice $178 value add there. Tremendous. That's great. Who knows, whenever X-Men 97 is released, hopefully not in 2097, but whenever they get around to it, if we see Magneto there in the purple M costume, this book's probably going to get another bump once we see it. And then the last couple of books, again, Batman 362 at $212 and a 9.8. I mean, all day long, I will spend $20 on a book that has the potential to be a 9.8, or the gamble to get it in a 9.8 where that value is over $200. That's great. I love doing that. And then Black Widow 3, again, a non-key, but a really fun Yelena Natasha cover, rounding out the order at $113 in a 9.8. So there's certainly some FOMO in this order. And now that I look at the particular books, I mean, maybe I FOMO'd also on the X-Men 200 a little. Like I said, I had some copies in my collection, but I might have FOMO'd over the condition. Like when I actually went to go pull the book out of my short box bin and actually saw that it really wasn't in a high grade, then I sort of FOMO'd thinking, well, I need to have one in a high grade. So certainly the Tomb 46, Black Widow 3, and Batman 362, those were just books that I prioritized with my analysis to say that those have some pretty good potential in a 9.8. And I think that the Batman 362, other than the Ed Hannigan cover art, it's really not considered to be a Batman key of any kind. So that one's kind of fun. And these are the books that kind of slip through the cracks where everyone is so heavily focused on key books. But I keep saying era, high condition, high quality. And there are some times where I really look at a book like Tomb of Dracula 46 and would like to have that somewhere in the 9.4 to 9.8 range. Then maybe a key with that's very significant, recognizable. But if it's a G or a VG copy, you could possibly squeeze out a little bit more value if you have those non-keys in high grade. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.